5 years had transformed Duke Alexander from a young man thrust into leadership to a seasoned ruler whose name was spoken with respect across the continent. The palace halls that had once hidden conspiracy now hummed with purposeful activity, and the servants who had helped expose Catherine's treachery had become trusted advisors in their own right. Margaret, the housemaid whose sharp eyes had uncovered the first forged document, now served as head of household staff. Her promotion had caused some grumbling among those who valued noble blood over competence, but Alexander had silenced critics by pointing out that loyalty and intelligence mattered more than birthright in matters of palace security. On this crisp autumn morning, Margaret supervised preparations for an important diplomatic summit. Representatives from 6 neighboring duchies would arrive to discuss a mutual defense treaty, a direct response to Count Rodrigo's increasingly aggressive expansion policies. "Sarah, those banners need to be perfectly aligned," Margaret instructed a young maid, "and check the blue hall again. His Grace wants everything flawless for our guests." The palace had changed in subtle but significant ways under Alexander's rule. New security measures were woven seamlessly into daily routines. Staff members wore special pins that changed color each day, making infiltration nearly impossible. Important documents bore special seals that revealed tampering, and a discreet network of loyal servants monitored every corner of the palace. Harrison, now in his 70s but still sharp as ever, met with Alexander in the Duke's study for their morning briefing. Age had slowed his steps, but not his mind, and Alexander relied on his counsel more than ever. "The Thornbridge delegation has arrived, Your Grace," Harrison reported. "Duke Wilhelm is already complaining about the accommodations, though I suspect that's simply his nature." Alexander smiled. The gruff old Duke had become an unlikely friend over the years, their alliance strengthened by shared opposition to Valmont's ambitions. "Put him in the tower suite. He'll grumble less with a good view." "Very good, Your Grace. Also, our special guest has requested an audience before the summit begins." The special guest was someone Alexander had been expecting but dreading. Princess Isabella of Valmont, Count Rodrigo's daughter, had arrived under flag of truce with a proposal her father claimed would end hostilities between their nations. Alexander suspected a trap, but couldn't refuse to hear her out without appearing weak. "Show her to the Rose Garden in an hour," Alexander decided. "Have Marcus position guards discreetly. If this is another scheme, I want options." The Rose Garden had been redesigned after Catherine's conspiracy. The old hidden corners opened up and sight lines improved. It remained beautiful, but was now impossible to use for clandestine meetings. Alexander arrived early, using the time to center himself for whatever game the Valmont princess intended to play. Princess Isabella proved to be nothing like her father in appearance. Where Count Rodrigo was dark and sharp-featured, his daughter was fair with soft brown eyes that seemed to hold genuine warmth. She wore a simple traveling dress rather than court finery, and she came accompanied by only 2 guards. "Your Grace," she said, dropping into a perfect curtsy. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." "Your Highness," Alexander responded with a formal bow. "I admit curiosity about what brings Count Rodrigo's daughter to my door." Isabella smiled, an expression that seemed genuinely amused rather than calculating. "My father's reputation precedes him, I see. May I speak plainly, Your Grace?" "I insist upon it." They walked among the roses as Isabella explained her presence. "My father is dying, Your Grace. The physicians give him perhaps 6 months. He knows his expansionist policies have created many enemies, and he fears what will happen to Valmont when he's gone." Alexander studied her carefully, looking for signs of deception. "And what does this have to do with Rosehaven?" "He wants to ensure stability for our people. The constant tension between our nations benefits neither. He proposes a marriage alliance between you and me, The words hung in the garden air like morning frost. Alexander had expected many things, but not this. A marriage alliance would indeed end the conflict. But at what cost? "Your father tried to steal my duchy through conspiracy and forgery," Alexander pointed out. "Now he offers his daughter as a peace offering?" Isabella's cheeks colored slightly. "My father is a complicated man who has made terrible choices. But I am not my father, Your Grace. I've spent the past 5 years trying to moderate his policies, protecting those who would suffer from his ambitions. Judge me by my own actions, not his." They continued their walk, discussing the practical aspects of such an alliance. Isabella proved intelligent and well-informed, clearly understanding the political implications. She also seemed genuinely interested in preventing further conflict, speaking passionately about the common people who suffered when nobles played their power games. "I need time to consider this," Alexander finally said, "and my advisors will need to examine any formal proposal carefully." "Of course," Isabella agreed. "I'm prepared to remain as your guest for as long as necessary. I only ask that you consider this. My father's death will create a power vacuum in Valmont. Would you rather deal with me, who seeks peace, or one of his generals who dreams of conquest?" After escorting Isabella to her quarters, Alexander convened his inner circle. The debate was fierce, with valid arguments on all sides. Duke Wilhelm was predictably opposed. "It's a trap, boy. Rodrigo couldn't conquer you with forgery or force, so now he tries honey instead of vinegar." Lady Eleanor was more thoughtful. "The princess has a reputation for charity work and moderate politics. Our intelligencers in Valmont confirm she's often opposed her father's aggressive policies, sometimes at personal risk. Marcus, ever the military mind, saw strategic value. A marriage alliance would secure our eastern border permanently. We could redirect those troops to other threats." Lord Chancellor Pemberton examined the legal implications. "The proposed treaty is surprisingly generous. Joint administration of disputed territories, free trade agreements, mutual defense clauses. If it's genuine, it would benefit both nations greatly." But it was Margaret who provided the most insightful observation. She had been serving tea during Isabella's arrival and noticed something others missed. "Begging your pardon, Your Grace, but the princess's guards were nervous. Not about entering enemy territory, but about her. They're protecting her from something besides us." This observation sent Alexander's spy network into overdrive. Within days, they uncovered the truth. Isabella had indeed opposed her father so effectively that hardline factions in Valmont wanted her dead. The marriage proposal was as much about saving her life as securing peace. Armed with this knowledge, Alexander met with Isabella again, this time in the palace library. "Tell me about General Volkov," he said without preamble. Isabella's composed mask slipped, showing real fear. "You're well informed." "Yes, Volkov leads the war faction. He believes Valmont's destiny is to rule the entire region. When father dies, he'll eliminate you and seize power," Alexander finished. "So this marriage proposal serves your interests as much as mine." "Does that make it less valid?" Isabella challenged. "Yes, I need protection, but I also genuinely believe our nations would be stronger as allies than enemies. Is mutual benefit not the foundation of all good alliances?" Over the following weeks, as the diplomatic summit progressed, Alexander found himself spending more time with Isabella. She attended meetings as an observer, offering thoughtful insights that impressed even skeptical delegates. She visited hospitals and schools in the duchy's towns, her genuine compassion evident to all who met her. Professor Whitmore, who had returned to palace service as royal historian, remarked to Alexander, "She reminds me of your mother, Your Grace. The same combination of intelligence and kindness." The summit itself was a masterwork of diplomacy. 6 duchies agreed to a mutual defense pact that would check Valmont's expansion without directly threatening it. Isabella helped craft language that protected Valmont's legitimate interests while preventing aggressive wars. But the real test came when news arrived that Count Rodrigo had taken a turn for the worse. He was demanding his daughter return immediately, and General Volkov's forces were massing near the border. "This is my fight," Isabella said when Alexander offered military support. "I must return and face whatever comes." "Not alone," Alexander decided. "If we're to have any future together, political or otherwise, I won't let you face this crisis without support." What followed was a delicate military and diplomatic dance. Alexander mobilized his forces to the border, not as invasion, but as warning. Duke Wilhelm brought his armies as well, grumbling about protecting fool youngsters from themselves. The journey to Valmont's capital was tense. Isabella rode beside Alexander, her guard merged with his, creating an impressive display of strength. Towns along the way watched nervously, unsure if this was invasion or something else entirely. Count Rodrigo's palace was a stark contrast to Rosehaven, all sharp angles and military efficiency. The dying count received them in his chambers, his once powerful frame reduced to skin and bones. But his eyes remained sharp, studying Alexander with calculating intensity. "So," Rodrigo wheezed, "the young duke comes to claim his prize." "I come to ensure a peaceful transition," Alexander corrected. "Your daughter has negotiated a treaty that serves both our peoples. I'm here to see it implemented." Rodrigo laughed, a harsh sound that triggered a coughing fit. Always the diplomat. But what happens when Volkov challenges you? He has the army's loyalty. Then he'll learn what the combined forces of 7 duchies can accomplish, Alexander replied calmly. "Your choice, Count. Die knowing Valmont will be destroyed in civil war, or die knowing your daughter will preserve what you built." The negotiation lasted hours, with Rodrigo testing Alexander's resolve repeatedly. But eventually, the dying count agreed. He would formally name Isabella his heir and announce the alliance with Rosehaven. In exchange, Alexander would help her maintain order during the transition. General Volkov arrived at the palace that evening, his scarred face showing fury at finding Alexander there. "This is Valmont business," he snarled. "Foreign interference won't be tolerated." "Securing our borders is Rosehaven business," Alexander countered. "Princess Isabella and I are discussing a treaty. Surely you support peace between our nations." The general's hand moved to his sword, but stopped when he noticed Alexander's guards positioning themselves. More importantly, several Valmont nobles who had been wavering moved to stand with Isabella. The promise of peace and prosperity was winning hearts. The power struggle climaxed 3 days later when Count Rodrigo died. Volkov immediately challenged Isabella's succession, claiming a woman couldn't lead Valmont's military culture. Isabella's response surprised everyone. "Then I propose a compromise," she announced in the Great Hall. "I will rule jointly with my husband, Duke Alexander of Rosehaven. Our nations will remain independent but allied, sharing the strength of both." The marriage that followed was both political necessity and, surprisingly, genuine affection. Alexander had come to admire Isabella's courage and intelligence, while she appreciated his integrity and strategic mind. Their wedding in Rosehaven was attended by representatives from across the continent, a clear signal that the balance of power had shifted. General Volkov attempted one last gambit, trying to assassinate the couple during their honeymoon. But Margaret, who had insisted on personally vetting the honeymoon staff, discovered the poisoner. The would-be assassin was caught, Volkov's involvement proven, and the general faced trial for treason. With Volkov removed, the integration of Rosehaven and Valmont's interests proceeded smoothly. Trade flourished, military tensions eased, and both nations prospered. Alexander and Isabella ruled from both capitals, spending half the year in each, binding their peoples together through visible unity. 5 years after that first meeting in the Rose Garden, Alexander stood on the palace balcony with Isabella, watching their twin children play in the gardens below. The boy showed his mother's diplomatic instincts, while the girl had inherited her father's strategic mind. "Do you ever regret it?" Isabella asked quietly. "You could have had a simpler life without Valmont's complications." Alexander pulled her close. "I learned long ago that palace life is never simple. Better to face complications with a worthy partner than simple problems alone." Harrison appeared at the doorway, as dignified at 80 as he had been at 60. "Your Graces, the council awaits." As they walked to the council chamber, Alexander reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From discovering a forged document to ruling 2 United Nations, it had been a path he never could have imagined. The council meeting focused on new challenges. Other nations, seeing the success of the Rosehaven-Valmont alliance, were proposing similar unions. The continent was transforming from a collection of squabbling duchies into cooperative partnerships. "We've started something bigger than ourselves," Isabella observed after the meeting. "All great changes start small," Alexander replied. "A maid notices a forged signature. A young duke chooses justice over revenge. A princess chooses peace over power. Each decision builds on the last." That evening, the palace hosted a celebration marking the 10th anniversary of the conspiracy's discovery. Margaret, now wearing the golden key of the household chancellor, supervised arrangements with the same attention to detail she had shown as a maid. Many of the original conspirators were present, in a fashion. Lord Blackstone had earned his way back from exile through genuine reform, now running charitable institutions. Baron Fitzgerald and Lord Ashwin had become productive members of society, their brush with treason teaching hard lessons. Even Catherine attended, under careful guard. Age and confinement had mellowed her, and she had written Alexander asking to see the palace one last time before she died. He had agreed, though Marcus kept security tight. "You've exceeded even your father's achievements," Catherine told Alexander during their brief meeting. "I was a fool to try stealing what you've built through integrity." "You were desperate," Alexander corrected gently. "Desperation makes fools of us all, but redemption is possible for those who truly seek it." The celebration continued late into the night, with nobles and servants mingling more freely than traditional protocol allowed. Alexander had instituted many such reforms, believing that artificial barriers bred the kind of resentment that enabled conspiracies. Duke Wilhelm, now ancient but still sharp, cornered Alexander near the refreshment table. "Never thought I'd see the day when Rosehaven and Valmont shared wine instead of blood," he admitted. "You've done well, boy." "We all have," Alexander replied, gesturing to the celebrating crowd. "Every person here contributed to our success." As midnight approached, Alexander and Isabella retired to their private chambers, leaving the celebration in Margaret and Harrison's capable hands. From their window, they could see the city beyond the palace walls, its lights twinkling with prosperity. What would have happened if Margaret hadn't found that document? Isabella wondered. Catherine might have succeeded in her theft. Mordecai would have ensnared the duchy in debt. Your father might have conquered a weakened Rosehaven. Our children would have inherited war instead of peace. Then we owe her more than can ever be repaid. Alexander smiled. I promoted her, gave her authority and wealth. But you know what she values most? Every morning, she still personally checks my study, making sure no suspicious documents appear. She says it's her duty to protect the duchy that gave her purpose. A soft knock interrupted their reflection. A young page entered with a message marked urgent. Alexander read it, his expression growing thoughtful. What is it? Isabella asked. Reports from our eastern border. A new count has risen in the distant kingdoms, one who preaches expansion and conquest. Our ambassadors say he's studying our history, looking for weaknesses. Isabella sighed. So it begins again. Another ambitious lord who thinks he can succeed where others failed. Let him come, Alexander said firmly. We have something now that we didn't before. Unity. Rosehaven and Valmont together, backed by our allies. We have servants who watch for forgeries, guards who check for infiltrators, and nobles who value stability over personal gain. They stood together at the window, rulers of a combined realm that had grown from conspiracy and conflict into cooperation and strength. The palace below them buzzed with activity even at this late hour, servants and nobles working together to maintain the peace they had built. Besides, Alexander added with a slight smile, I've asked Margaret to train a new generation of observant maids. If anyone tries to forge documents in our realm, they won't get far. Isabella laughed, the sound bright in the quiet chamber. The secret weapon of Rosehaven, vigilant housekeeping. As dawn approached, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Duke Alexander reflected on the lesson that had shaped his reign. Great nations weren't built solely by noble bloodlines or military might. They were built by ordinary people doing extraordinary things, by servants who chose loyalty over silence, by guards who stayed true when offered bribes, by citizens who valued justice over personal gain. The conspiracy of the forged documents had failed, but from its ashes had risen something greater. Two nations united, former enemies now allies, all because a housemaid named Margaret had the courage to report what she found in a duchess's study. History would record the grand alliances and diplomatic triumphs, but Alexander knew the truth, that history turned on smaller moments, a servant's honesty, a duke's mercy, a princess's courage. These were the threads from which the tapestry of nations was woven. Outside, the sun rose fully, bathing Rosehaven Palace in warm light. A new day had dawned, bringing new challenges and opportunities. But Alexander faced them with confidence, knowing he had the greatest strength any ruler could possess, the loyalty and wisdom of those who served alongside him. The young duke who had discovered betrayal in his stepmother's schemes had become a leader who understood that true power lay not in commanding obedience, but in inspiring devotion. And in the palace halls where conspiracy once festered, trust now flourished, tended by those who remembered the lessons of the past while building toward a better future. The story of the forged documents had ended, but the story of Rosehaven and Valmont's united destiny had just begun. And at its heart remained a simple truth, that integrity, courage, and vigilance could overcome any conspiracy, no matter how carefully crafted. As Alexander and Isabella prepared for the day's duties, they passed Margaret in the corridor, already organizing the morning's tasks with her usual efficiency. She curtsied to her rulers, but Alexander caught the small smile of satisfaction on her face. She had saved a duchy with her sharp eyes and brave heart, and now she helped protect an alliance that brought peace to millions. Such was the power of palace staff who chose loyalty over personal gain, who understood that their service, however humble it might seem, could shape the destiny of nations. The revelation of the conspiracy had changed everything, transforming not just the palace but the very fabric of society itself. And in the archives of Rosehaven, carefully preserved for future generations, rested the original forged document that had started it all, a reminder that vigilance was the eternal price of justice, and that heroes could emerge from the most unexpected places, wearing a maid's uniform as easily as a duke's crown.